who don't know, my name is James Ferguson. I'm here in the Mechanical Engineering Department, and I have been asked to make a short presentation in our department chair's absence, Don Plumley. I think he regrets not being here. We have in the past yearly selected honors out of the graduating class. A few years ago, we started offering courses, every course every semester, so we are now receiving or getting graduates who complete their degrees in December. And so at this time, we have decided to make awards for the graduating class twice a year, once in December and once in May. And so this is the first time we've done this in the fall. So this is our inaugural graduating class in December for awards. I'm very honored to be able to make these presentations before we get started on our panel discussion. So with that, first let me go through these. These awards are selected by the group of mechanical engineering faculty and instructors, and we put a fair amount of thought into this. I should say that these awards represent various areas that we feel are important for success as a mechanical engineer. And these individuals, I think, exemplify what these awards are all about. So, in the Mechanical and Biomedical Engineering Department, we have selected 3 awards, the first being the Scholarship Award. And so I am pleased to present the Scholarship Award to Dane Conrad. Dane? Congratulations. I had the pleasure of knowing, I think, each of these nominees, these recipients, in a number of various classes, and they're all very deserving. Our outstanding mechanical engineering graduate is John Everingham. Congratulations. And finally, our Mechanical and Biomedical Engineering Leadership Awards goes to Ahmad Al-Rabi. So with that, one last round of applause for our recipients. We'll now get into the seminar portion, and before I'm doing that, I'd like to pass around and have everybody do a little attendance sheet. This helps us keep track of what we're doing in the department and attribute to funds and so forth. And so please be sure to sign your name and affiliation here. So I'm going to step those around with the pens. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn today's activities over to Leandra. All right. Thanks.
Okay, well, we invited 4 of our mechanical engineering graduates to talk to you about their experiences here at Boise State and maybe some things that they wish they had known when they were sitting where you are now. So on the left-hand side, we have James Carillo. He graduated in 2012 with his bachelor's degree. He's worked at Boeing, and he's now working on his master's degree, I believe an MBA, right?
Aeronautics, astronautics.
Oh, okay. And then next we have Marcum. He graduated in 2006. He works at YMC here in Boise, and he's part of the local ASHRAE or professional organization. Then we have Mark Johnson. He graduated in 2011, and he currently works at Micron, but he also worked at CSHQA for several years. And then we have Nathaniel Haro. He graduated in 2004 with his bachelor's degree, and he now works at PKG User Interfacce, and I know he has a lot of experience with some other companies as well. So why don't we just start it off with you guys telling us a little bit about what you wish you'd known back when you were an undergraduate, and then we'll open it up to questions. Go ahead, James, you kick it off.
Good. All right. I guess I wish I would have known a little more GD&T.
You wish you'd known what?
A little more GD&T, general dimensioning and tolerance. It's hard to put a value on how much it gets used during mechanical design. A little less technical that I wish I would have known is just kind of, I don't know, more the workflow that engineering would really entail when it comes to drawings coming across your desk. It would have been nice to know a little bit more what that was going to be like, so I can answer some questions about that later. Have some questions.
I would say on the technical aspect, in my line of work, just the workflow is actually exactly the thing that we don't really, or that we didn't really learn back when I was here. I thought as far as getting a design, getting that design approved, and then fabricating the part you design. There's a lot that goes into that. I think in school we learned more about just how to design and go through the process, but not actually get something made. At least for me anyways, like in the real world, like all the budgets you have to do, and that was a bit of an eye-opener. And then on the non-technical side, I wish that I would have been more involved in school groups. I worked a lot in the warehouse. It paid the bills, but it didn't really do anything for me professionally. And some of my friends that worked here at the school and had internships, they made a little bit less money, but they got a lot more experiences and a lot better networking. And I really think I missed the boat on that one, looking back.
There was one class that a lot of the students, they weren't sure how applicable it was. And I'm not sure how they've broken the classes now, but we had a mechanical design class that I took here, and it's actually been one of the most useful ones that we took. Kind of what Carl said, like learning how things are made, that's pretty important. Knowing the processes they go through, like there was a machine shop class that was offered here, but it was when I was going to school, it was only offered during the Christmas break, and so I didn't take it, but I should have, because now having to work with machine shops and trying to figure out how they are going to bend apart or mill apart would be pretty helpful. Recently, I designed a part and wanted like a aluminum 3003, but found out that's not a common material that the shop has on hand, so I had to change it to another one. That kind of knowledge is good to have.
I would definitely agree with these guys in assembly structure and how you build stuff. Right now that is a key struggle that we're going through at PKG in the past of engineers not knowing, hey, here's just a general BOM, but it's never been organized and according to a subassembly of how the people on the shop floor actually go through and assemble stuff, how the company past engineering handles and deals with those different parts and assemblies. So I guess a lot of it is just forethought in the design to say, okay, yes, I'm going to design it this way, it's functional, it works, but also how are the people after me going to be able to see and use this information? What can I do up front to not only ease what they do, but prevent me from going back and having to rework a design and restructure it later on. And right now, I would say I'm losing at least 10 to 20% of my time per week going back and fixing stuff that people have done in the past where they just haven't put that forethought in. Outside of that, a lot of the stuff that I've seen where I'm lacking is machining skills. Unlike these gentlemen here, I was in the program pretty early in BSU where they did not have the capability of the engineers to go back and get some additional machining skills along with the program. And that was some of the feedback that we gave to them and they've implemented since then. So I would definitely say utilize that, get as much machining skills as you can because it is very helpful.
Carl, will you tell us about the ASHRAE organization?
Yeah, so I think I've actually met a few of you guys. I've been to the career fair. So It stands for the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Engineers. And we used to have a chapter. We don't have a BSU chapter now. We could go start back up. But for you guys right now, it's great because we do scholarships. We do 2 $500 scholarships every year. We gave out 2 last spring. I have the forms out right now. I'll send them to Landra to email out.
What's the deadline?
I think I put it February 1st or something like that.
And that's for the local chapter?
Yeah, so that's the local chapter, and that's actually a check that goes to you, which is pretty nice. So for the immediate future, that's kind of a good thing for you guys. I will say professionally, it's helped me in 2 very distinct areas. When I went to get my PE, you have to have a few PE sign off on you. My company only has 1, and it's my uncle, so he can't sign off on me, so I had none. And within 10 minutes, I was able to get 5 PEs to sign off on me just because of all the networking that I had done, which was great. The second thing is I was at a conference down in Colorado and met a guy down there. And their chapter hit it off. He helped us get our website up. And about 6 years later, I was bidding on a sizable chiller replacement project that he happened to be the engineer on. And it was a competitively bid project, and we got it. And I think a lot of that was just having that relationship and having have confidence in my company and me, and it definitely helped out a lot. So I urge all of you to join. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. You get lunch every month, get scholarships, and if you're going to stay in the industry or in the heating and cooling world around here, I don't know of a better way to network with principals of engineering firms and managers and contractors.
And I was part of ASHRAE before I worked at Micron, and I definitely got some jobs out of the networking there because went to an interview and, oh yeah, I know you. And they knew that I was involved and knew something about the industry.
So you still meet on Fridays, and our students allowed to come down?
Students can come, and I can get your email info for you on our list. It's Wednesdays now. Fridays seem a little busy for everybody, so changed it to Wednesdays about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's helped out quite a bit.
At noon?
At noon, yeah. We usually meet at the Idaho Power Building downtown. Sometimes we have tours of facilities. We went out to JTS. They make packaged chiller units for the medical field. We went out there 2 months ago. We had a meeting at Idaho Power this week. Have some speakers coming from out of town and learned some pretty cool topics.
Anyone, it's open to questions, but I also wanted to mention, Nathaniel, what do you do at PKG? Some people may not be familiar with that.
So PKG is a small company here in the Valley, and what we do is custom user interface devices. So basically anything, touchpads, keyboards, touch screens, trackballs. The company's kind of thing is that they like to say that we do where the human meets the machine. We do a lot of stuff for like GE and Philips, a lot of their medical imaging devices. I'm working on a pilot keyboard and maintenance keyboard for an Airbus A350 right now, which is, even though it's this tiny little thing, I mean, it's a beast of a project. It's been sucking up my time extensively for the last 6 months, and I'm hoping it's only 2 more months, but I'm guessing it's probably going to be about 4. You kind of know how that goes with airline stuff. Those small projects do that real quick on you. But yeah, so I deal with a lot of stuff, anywhere from sheet metal parts to machine parts to injection molded. There's a little bit of programming on my side, but it's more of the electrical engineers that do the programming. It has a really wide variety of stuff associated with it. Yes?
Did you have any challenges once you started your first job and applying what you learned here in school, real life job? Is there any challenges at your first job? There is one.
My first job was kind of unique because while I was getting my bachelor's, I was working for the new product development lab, and so I rolled over into one of the companies that we were doing work for. So it was my first job, but yet it wasn't. So most of those challenges I've had already seen. I don't know about you guys.
first challenges was learning CATIA, because it's very different than SolidWorks. And it's more of an industry standard, especially in aerospace. So that was a little bit of a challenge, having to pretty much relearn, CAD. But there were some things that you learned from your CAD class that are applicable. You just gotta find the button. I think another challenge was.
I always use the example, in college I worked in a warehouse that stocked parts for motorcycles and snowmobiles, which is what I love. And it was the best job ever because I got to handle parts for motorcycles and snowmobiles all day long and talk to people about that, but it didn't make any money. So I had to get a joke as a real job so I could afford to buy motorcycles and snowmobiles. So some people would want to work in a warehouse, and I have friends that still work there 15 years later, and they make $10 an hour, but they're happy. So you definitely have to ask yourself what is important to you.
And you have to be flexible too. When I graduated, so I started school in 2006 and graduated in 2011. And so during that time, I didn't think Micron would ever hire me because they were laying off people. But recently they've been doing really well. And I've had to kind of go to do different jobs because at that moment that's the big hot item. Like energy efficiency was really hot when I was graduating, and that was what I was kind of going into, and then that dropped off. So then I, at the same company, I was able to kind of change positions into plumbing. Enjoyed that, and then now I'm at Micron doing something else with test equipment. So you want to have a long-term goal where you want to be. Sometimes you have to be flexible to keep up with the market.
Yeah, like they said, it's hard to answer that because each person is different, and it depends on what you want. And over time, what you want is going to change as well. So it's just mainly, knowing or having an idea of where you want to go, in say 5 years, 10 years, and what you want to be doing from there and trying to get there.
You have a question?
What are the main differences between doing engineering in college and doing engineering out in the real world?
Lack of variables.
In the real world or here?
In the real world,
Okay, that's what I
yes.
thought.
Usually it's, I want this. Well, great. What is this? Well, I kind of want it to do something like, that. All right. Well, you'll go back and you'll kind of do something big. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this over here, really. So sometimes it's not. It's much more vague, is what I should say. In college you have set problem sets, parameters, a set goal. In the real world, a lot of times it's, well, we kind of want to do this, and we think it's going to look like this. At least from the design standpoint of a lot of the projects I've done. Especially when you get into consumer products, the look and feel of something is very important. So you think you'll be going down this path and thinking you've got the look and the feel right of what they want, and you propose it to them, and you're just way out in left field. And so then it takes you back around to another iteration and another. A lot more revisions of stuff, but it is what it is. You either have fun doing it or you don't. You just move on.
I would say there's a cost tied to the part you're designing.
Everything you get.
So I remember I designed this part, and I did this awesome ANSYS optimization for structures, dual failure, and I take it to the stress engineer, and they're like, well, if we have to change it, we have to kind of redo your analysis. So we need to be able to do it using an equation that's 2 inches long. So you have to realize that sometimes the optimal solution or the academically precise solution isn't always the best. Sometimes it's what saves cost. A forged part is going to be really strong and nice, but if you have to change it, then you have to change the casting, and that's expensive and takes time. So there's sometimes more variables. Boeing, no, because we have special, I can't remember the word for it, it's like a blessing from the federal government that's like, okay, everyone doesn't have to have PE because you have this, special blessing. So if I wanted to go get my PE, I'd have a hard time finding someone that had a PE within Boeing that I'd worked under.
For me, I would say it's a double-edged sword. I have my PE, and it allows me to talk to other PEs, and they take my opinion more seriously, which as a contractor is good. So I would say in construction, it's good to have. The only downside is when you get higher in management, there's a chance you could be more liable on projects. So even if I'm not dealing on a project and I tell my guys, okay, that's fine. If something was to fail, I've heard there's cases where someone can come back and say, well, he's a PE, he should have caught that, even though I was acting as a manager, not as an engineer. So I know some PEs, they used it for 10, 20 years and then actually let it go when they got into upper management so that they were not held professionally liable for certain parts of the project.
And that's a very good question for me because I signed up for the PE exam last night. And it's kind of strange. I set a goal like from the very beginning because I was working in HVAC design and I knew for that I had to have a PE to get anywhere. And even if you have a really great idea and the PE doesn't like the idea and you're not a PE, it puts you in a lower level as well. But so now that I'm at Micron, actually there's very few there that need a PE, so it doesn't do much for me there. So, but I set it as a goal, and I'm gonna do it. Take the test in April, and I feel like that's what I need to be doing because there are departments at Micron that would be useful, like if I went to work in facilities, and if I wanted to go out on my own, have your own consulting business. There's a lot more opportunities. It just depends on what field you're going to be in. So if I stayed in designing test equipment my whole career, it probably wouldn't be very useful. But if I moved into another position in the company, it might. It's a lot of work, so you have to make that decision.
And if you're at a design firm, you get a pay raise automatically, right? If you have a PE.
Depends on Micron. Depends on the department.
Well,
My
like
department,
CSHQA?
Yeah, CSHQA, you can get a raise.
So
Yeah, I would.
At
I get one- I
Micron, you'd
get
have
one
to
when
be
I
in
get my
facilities
master's.
to get a raise.
For me, it's the PE, it could help or not. It depends on, again, what you're doing. So on the, consumer side of products, it could help you potentially get a job and be looked at a more professional level, especially, if you're right at that 4 or 5 year mark where you could get it. After a while, though, it's less likely to matter in my field. But again, I can see, in the past where I was doing like chiller designs, that type of thing, that it is more important on that side. So again, a lot of it's the path that you take and where your career is going to go and what you want to do.
Are you gonna get your PE?
I attempted it once, didn't happen because of some personal reasons on the wife's side. We had some family issues that kind of hit right in the middle, and so I ended up essentially raising my sister-in-laws for a couple months during that, and so that negatively affected it. I think I will eventually go back and get it now that stuff on that side has kind of calmed down and ironed out.
What about getting a master's, James? Do you find that valuable? MBA versus engineering?
I have an MBA, and I thought it was a better solution for me, being in more of a management role. Having a master's in engineering would be fun to get, and I'm sure I would learn a lot. But for me, it wouldn't really do a whole lot for my career. My MBA and engineering combo is pretty solid for what I do.
For me, it was kind of a requirement to the job I need to get to. It's a bare minimum. You do digital control laws, like algorithms that keep the planes in the air. because I wanted to get there, it was kind of a requirement. So,
Yeah, if it's like advanced technology development, or you wanna be like in management or R&D, you should probably get a master's, but otherwise, if you're like wanna be more of a designer, it's more important to get the industry experience, so I'm not going for a master's. Yep.
And I got my master's in mechanical engineering in '07, I believe it was. Anyways, and it has greatly helped on the side of, like right now, I'm actually the lead mechanical engineer in this small company, and I'm going through and I'm redeveloping how they run a lot of their tests and their test procedures and that type of thing, because the masters actually gave me that research and how are we going to test something, okay? So I think a lot of base engineers, they don't have that in-depth and advanced ability to create a lot of tests for longevity of a project, and they don't foresee, you know, in 10 years, what happens if we can't reproduce this? And so that has given me a leg up in different aspects of my career.
And I will say, it sounds like you did it slightly differently, but I would highly recommend not getting your master's directly after your bachelor's. I think I've benefited a lot getting out in the real world, working, getting experience, and then it gave me a direction to get my master's degree, and it also, I took it much more seriously, because when you're at work and then you know how you can apply it, I think it sits in a little bit more. And that's just my personal opinion.
Any other questions?
How much do you feel like your first job either dictated or at least set the stage for the rest of your career? Like, not only the type of job, but like what you're doing there, department-wise, and with the company involved?
Yeah, so when I was going to school, I was working for a HVAC company and designing HVAC, and so I got that experience that when I applied for jobs, I had a much greater likelihood of getting a job in that. So, yeah, experience is important, so that first job can be pretty important.
I wouldn't put too much emphasis on your first job. If anything, you learn what you don't like. So that is valuable in a sense, but you're also, you know, learning something. It doesn't matter if you're doing HVAC or nuclear engineering. You know, you're gonna learn something. You're gonna learn what you like, what you don't like, and then you just try and move forward from there, adding more and more value to your career. That's how you make decisions based on value. Does it motivate you more? Does it give you more money? Do you not care for more money? Do you enjoy your job? Do you enjoy people you work with?
I had a lot of odd jobs in college, so I got a lot of work experience, and then my first real engineering job after school is where I'm still at. I plan on retiring there, so I think in the current workforce, that's probably abnormal to have one job for that long, but so I guess my view on that's going to be different than most, because I don't plan on leaving. So my first job out of school is who I am now, and it's pretty important to me.
And I'll add, so that's where internships are nice, because, you know, over one summer, you can work a few months, get a feel for what that job is, and then if you don't like that, you can try something the next summer. I always, I worked at like four different places over my summers, and really helped me get a better feel for what I was going to do. Then when I graduated, I worked at a company as an internship for 3 months, and when that didn't seem to be moving towards a full-time position, I looked elsewhere.
What was the question again?
How much like does your first job basically out of school?
Yeah.
The first real like full-time engineering job dictate basically kind of, or will it dictate the rest of your career and what kind of jobs you like?
I don't believe it'll ever dictate the rest of your career, or even, you know, the next 3 to 5 years if you don't like it. It's one of those things that, like we said, you're going to learn real quick what you like and what you don't like from that first job. If you don't like it, you're always free to move somewhere else. The thing that I would really warn against is jumping companies very often. If there's a reason, especially on your first job out of college, and you're there and you work for it for about a year, and it's like, yeah, this just isn't working out, I'm not liking it, you go to another company. That's pretty understandable because you're just out of college, you might not exactly know exactly where you fit in. And that first one could help give you that direction. But if you're sitting there jumping, a company every 1 to 2 years, it's a huge red flag on your resume.
There was actually a professional engineer in town that did that. Seems like every 2 years he skipped, and he worked at 5 engineering firms, and no one would hire him after that because they just assumed he was unemployable because he had skipped firms so much. So yeah, I would be wary about moving too often.
You guys are all mechanical engineers, right? Okay, so I guess if you were in Silicon Valley and you were a computer science guy, you can jump companies every year. That's pretty common down there. So I think it kind of depends where you are. But yeah, don't let that first job, keep you from your dreams.
What's probably the one engineering tool you use the most? Like the one quiver, the one arrow in your quiver that you always go to?
MATLAB.
And then what's the one that you wish you had that you just haven't had time to learn?
Python.
Python is the one you use the most, or you wish you did?
Wish I knew.
What's the one that you use the most?
MATLAB.
MATLAB and Python.
But I'm kind of going a little bit different track than most mechanical engineers.
I'd say for engineering, it would be CAD. I use it a lot on a personal level and on a work level. I use it almost every day. And I'm not even a design engineer. Just being able to navigate drawings and give feedback is key. And I wish I had done more 3D modeling. I mean, we had it back when I was here for sure, but I just didn't do as much of it as I would have liked, and I could use that a lot more now.
Do you guys have drafters?
Yeah. Yeah. SolidWorks and Revit. Yeah, so now typically I just hired a guy that knows it way better than me because it was easier than learning it myself. That's what you get to do, man, unfortunately.
I use Solid Edge, it's like SolidWorks, and Excel's pretty powerful too. I mean, you have common calculations you do on a daily basis, and there's really a lot of functionality in there that's kind of hidden until you start looking at it.
But I'd say that's a given now. Like 10 years ago, that was a skill you sold, whereas now I think it's just assumed you have to be really proficient at Excel.
Yep. And when I say really proficient, I mean really proficient.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, if I stumble across, even with SolidWorks, if I stumble across a part that is designed improperly inside SolidWorks, I will pull them aside and have a word with them, because that one part, it doesn't matter. At that one point in time, it might not, but that is just a sample of your work that I've seen, so that at that point, I have to assume the rest of your work is like that, okay? Even with, Excel, if I go in and, poke around and I can't navigate your spreadsheet properly, then there's an issue. But back to your original question of, the tools that I use every day would probably be CAD, SolidWorks for the most part. I'm in a daily basis. Excel, Word, unfortunately every day. What I wish I knew more of would be programming. There's a lot of times where, I have a mechanical test setup, like this keyboard, it has a flap that we have to test to make sure it's going to last 5 years, which is equivalent to 36,000 cycles. And so we have, just a little setup to open and close this thing over and over again. Well, over the time, I've had to go through and make little tweaks. And with the programming, the way that the double E's have written it, it's so in depth that I can't just go in and say, hey, I want to make this 30 seconds longer. How do I do that? I have to go get a double E, bring them over and say, modify this program for me, and then it's just done. It's like, okay, so it's more of a hassle. So yeah, it's definitely something I wish I knew more of, and it's in my career path that I want to learn. But it's very hard to start learning large sets of stuff like that once you hit your career.
And that reminded me, knowing how to write a concise, well-written email.
Yes.
I just hired an engineer down in Salt Lake, and I'm sure the guy's smart, but communicating with him is like talking to a fifth grader. And he would do so much better if he could, verbalize what he's trying to do in these drawings and these models. And it's so hard to write anything to him. You just call him every time, right? So know how to communicate your ideas and know how to, email. And it sounds so simple to people that are going to be engineers, but being able to write a nice email is a rarity, unfortunately, among us, it seems like.
And that kind of reminds me of resumes. So I mentioned that we just went through and hired interns. I would say we received upwards of 40 resumes or so between BSU and NNU. I would say I took at least half of those, put them in an instant no pile, because there were blatant mistakes on them. I mean, an example is one of them, you know the standard Word template where it says your name here, you had dates, and you populate that? Literally it said your name here, had the guy's address, had his phone number and everything, but he could not populate your name here. There's a lot of stuff like that in resumes where you look at it and you're just like, how did you not see that? Did you not proofread this? Okay, that one's decent. I mean, that's the first glance. If I have to spend a lot of time going through a resume to understand what you're trying to get, your information conveyed to me, it's going in the no pile almost like that, because I don't have the time to do that. Yes?
And along the same lines, those of you who hired people, what about cover letters? What are you looking for in that?
When I was looking for cover letters is, number one, you knew something about the company. You could convey to me why you felt you fit the company and the position that was being hired. Okay? So, as a rule of thumb, anytime in the past when I was unemployed and sending a resume and cover letter, I would literally spend about 2 to 3 hours on that resume and cover letter for one company. Okay? And right now my resume, I feel it's pretty strong and it's pretty set the way that I want it. But it's going through, the cover letter is really what takes up most of that time. You go through and address the key points, what they're looking for, how do you feel you meet that requirement, how you feel that you can, add to the company as an employee. Maybe, hey, I'm coming in, I want to learn everything, I want to, develop my career path to do this, I think I can do that here.
So do employers, I've always wondered if they just take that cover letter and throw it away.
I do.
I gotta go right to the
I don't even look at it.
See,
You look at it?
I glance at the cover letter, and it says I don't read it, but I go through and it's like, okay, do they have the skills? Did they take the time to tell me why they want this job? And if they don't, I toss it to the side.
I don't even look at the cover letter. I just flip right to the resume and see what their work experience is. And
Some do and some don't.
yeah, I mean,
You better
it's-
make one.
And,
It's
and for
also
me,
different.
we have a lot more internal documents and external documents that we have to write. And if you can't write a clean cover letter, how am I supposed to know you can write a nice document, a nice test report, a procedure, documents that, work instructions that have to go to the shop? If that cover letter tells me a lot about your capabilities, just on the writing side.
And another advice I'd give is, when I was going to school, I really did not enjoy, I didn't really enjoy it. But I was stubborn about it. I thought, what, this is my goal, this is what I want to do. I want to be a mechanical engineer, so I'm just going to stick with it. I stuck with it, I graduated, and I've been able to keep the job ever since, whereas people didn't haven't had as good of luck. And so, yeah, I'd say stick with it. It'll get better when you graduate. So
Now, are most of you guys seniors?
And some of you may go out and start your own companies too, with all the knowledge that you've gotten and all the ideas that come in your head. Micron started with just a few, just 2 people, and built up from there. So I hope there'll be future companies growing out of this group.
And a couple advice for you females in here. When you get to the shop floor, you're gonna really have to earn the respect of most of the older guys out there, okay? Especially being a female, you know, as a young engineer, you don't have as much respect, but especially, you know, the guys that have been with the company and they're in their 60s and 70s, you have to earn it more, is kind of what I've noticed. You have to prove it, and that can be a stumbling block at times, so just be very mindful of that.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. I learned a lot, hope all of you did too. And got some more pizza to eat, so thank you very much, you guys.